Today I kind of wanted to cover the film The Last Stop in Yuma County. Last Stop in Yuma County is set in 1970s Arizona, and yeah, it has this really cool location, I think. Just the motel nearby, the local diner, it is all very old-timey, but also sort of timeless in a way. Like, I didn't know till after watching the movie that it was set in the 70s, but there are little hints to tip you off to that fact. The film is a first time feature from director Francis Galuppi. He discussed how, yeah, he had made some short films prior, but this is his first soiree and feature film, and I think it's very impressive for that. It has some pretty name actors, actors with a lot of credits, and actors that I've been a big fan of for some time. One of the bigger credits when we're talking about actors is actor director Jim Cummings, who, yeah, I've been a big fan of for a while. I covered his film Wolf of Snow Hollow on this channel before, and he has other movies including The Beta Test and Thunder Road, which I also quite enjoy. He always has this kind of fun, nervous screen presence to him. And yeah, this is the first film I've seen where he's the main character of a film that he didn't write or direct. So yeah, initially I kind of did think this was right up his alley, like a small indie film with him in the main starring role. But yeah, he was just an actor in this film, and I think he does a pretty great job. Another more name actor you might recognize is actor Gene Jones, who you might recognize from like hundreds and hundreds of credits. But probably most notably in favor of this film, he was in the coin toss scene from the movie No Country for Old Men. And while there are like a couple name actors, I think even the smaller actors that maybe you or me wouldn't recognize, I think they all do a very good job fitting their character and just helping the fitting the tone of the film. They're very southern feeling. They're, a little cliche, a little prototypical, but I think they're a lot of fun and they really help with the just fit the movie's tone. And going back to films like No Country for Old Men, I think this film really does wear some of its influences on its sleeve. I think it's definitely very inspired by No Country for Old Men with this kind of older older southern tone, as well as inspired by like Tarantino films such as Reservoir Dogs or even Hateful Eight in a lot of ways. I think it's a very tense, tight indie thriller, and while necessarily it doesn't trump any of these features that came before it, it is a very valiant effort for a first time feature filmmaker to make movies that are influenced by these other like notable influential films. Now, one thing about this movie that I really did like is kind of how the film introduces the audience to this revolving door of characters. You know, when the small group of characters might feel a little stale with this stagnant location, they introduce you to these new, different characters with each different qualities. And I think one thing that really does aid in and is making the film feel more real, because in real life, we don't just have main characters and this guy and no one else. Other people stumble in. Real life is more like that, so it does feel more real, and it also helps give the film a bigger scale. So like, even though they used like one location to kind of cleverly sneak around budget restrictions, corners weren't really cut in the other categories. Most of the writing and acting doesn't really give hints to a lower budget job. And I'd say a lot of the actors do a really good job just selling the script. And it just in turn makes it very easy for the audience to get wrapped up in the story it's telling. The film Last Stop in Yuma County, I'd say, is like a really enjoyable first indie film, but I would say that it left me with a few minor criticisms, some more major than others. So I'd say in the film there's a lot of kind of plot conveniences, and some of these I would definitely forgive, because even if there are plot conveniences to move the story along, they can happen naturally, like naturally occurring. I'd say my biggest complaint within plot conveniences is just there is a crime that one of the characters hears on the radio, a pretty major crime, while he's in his car. And then every time it cuts back to the sheriff character, he seems more preoccupied with making sure his precinct has enough coffee, sending his deputy out to get coffee, rather than, maybe a manhunt going on. It's a little far fetched to believe that they wouldn't be at the very least a little bit more worried and maybe have their own story outside of the plot. Because, obviously at some point, you can't have a sheriff and not have him in the story at some point. At some point, he does get involved, but, you know, the he should be focused on something else. It sort of just seems like they're doing nothing while this whole thing is happening, and it's a little confusing for that. And then I'd say one of my other major criticisms with the film is sort of just in kind of a lack of grayness with some of the characters. Now, there's like bad characters, there's good characters, heroes and villains, which I would never really criticize. It's just more so in a film, you're, if let's say a character was doing some evil and you shoot him and you're supposed to go yay, and then a character was good and you shoot, you're supposed to be kind of shocked, obviously. That's sort of how it works. But I think, a great film like Reservoir Dogs, for example, bringing it back to Reservoir Dogs, there is the scene at the end. Now, I like, it's weird because it's such an old movie. I wouldn't want to spoil it for anyone. But just this scene where, everyone in the film, they're criminals. They're robbing a bank. But, there are ones you like and ones you like less. And there's ones who are like, he's a rat, let's get him. And there's other guys who are like this. And there's this sense of grayness when they were maybe kind of closing in on who it could be. And it leaves you with this very uncomfortable feeling, it leaves you ending wanting more and also just sort of being in awe almost of what you just saw. Like, not to tote that movie too highly, but that I remember that whole film, especially the ending, was one of those first films that really like got me super into film in general. And I think that the way this film wraps up, it wraps up too nicely. Like, Reservoir Dogs leaves this grayness, this uncomfortability, but it's a good place to end it. This movie ends on a good place too, but I don't think there's the same level of grayness. It kind of leaves it feeling a bit more surface level than something that would maybe go more into the morality of a character. If he's, doing something out of greed, you might think like, oh, you shouldn't do that. That's a bad idea. But then it's like, oh, greed corrupts or whatever, and that's the message. I feel like, a film, again, when we're dealing with greed, No Country for Old Men just does it much better. This guy just stumbles upon money and he thinks it's like practically untraceable, but it could, it's No Country for Old Men. This is like a new town. It's dark. It's like brooding. It's a different story with this film that I just think it works very well in a short film type of surface level nature. It doesn't work as fantastically for a feature film, but still, with all that being said, I'd still think it's really enjoyable for like an indie feature where with good writing, good acting, some parts where the acting, not every single scene is Oscar worthy, but for the most part really good acting, a couple scenes maybe I didn't love, a couple plot conveniences maybe I didn't love, and maybe it just didn't go deep enough, but overall I think it's a very enjoyable film. If any of this sounded interesting to you, I would still definitely recommend you guys watch it. And I'd probably give Last Stop in Yuma County a 7 out of 10. So, yeah, that's pretty much it.